There's 28 trillion little cells, and their collective behavior is you. That's the coherence magic trick that nature pulls off over and over again, and we don't know how to do yet. But that's the mission. That's what we're gonna figure out. We're gonna figure out how you get a collection of separate beings to act as a single one.
Great to have you here, Emmett.
Thank you for having me.
So, doesn't really need an introduction, but I will by nature of formality. Emmett is a very successful founder in the Valley, made Twitch, and so for those following on chat, print dubs. Emmett was also the very interim CEO of OpenAI, and so he got to see what Ilya saw, one could say. One of the few people who had that opportunity. And now he's working on a alignment lab called Softmax. So it is a pleasure to have you here, Emmett. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
So to begin here, since we have an audience of folks that are, one could say outside of the alignment community in a lot of ways, alignment curious, we have engineers, we have policymakers, we have researchers. Help walk me through what exactly is alignment, and what are you focusing on with that in particular?
Yeah, I think the question of what is alignment is one of those very important questions, because everybody seems to have a different idea about it.
Exactly.
You ask 3 people about what alignment is, and you get 3 different answers. I think the thing that all the answers have in common is that things are aligned if they're pointed in the same direction. It's like the literal dictionary definition of alignment is that thing means to be pointed in the same direction as, to be aligned with. And that always raises the question, if someone says, oh, we're working on aligning this, you should always ask them the follow-up question, oh, to what? Because you can't be aligned in the abstract. In that sense, everything is aligned. You're always aligned to something. It might not be the thing you want to be aligned to, but you're aligned to something. You're pointed in some direction. So it's not really about being aligned in the abstract. It's about being aligned to something. And there's basically 2 choices for something to align to. You can align to some objective direction, some described direction in the world, right? So you can align to the direction of north. You can align to some rules for working, like a deontological set of rules for what your behavior should be. You can align to doing the funniest thing you can imagine each point. Those are all things you could align to, but they're static things. And the other thing you can do is something that I think of as aligning with, which is instead of aligning to a thing, you align with a thing that is also aligning to you. And there's something very different about being aligned with something rather than to something. When you drive, you are aligned to the rules of the road. And if you drive through a red light, you're breaking those rules. You're failing to be aligned to those rules. But you're aligned with the other drivers. And they're trying not to hit you, and you're trying not to hit them. So even if somebody does break the rules of the road, everyone's aligned about this we're all not going to die thing together and trying not to hit each other. And so that's when we talk about organic alignment, which is what Softmax's alignment goal is. We are talking about an alignment with the idea of sentient beings, or I don't know. When you get talking about sentience, people get all weird about it. But like choice-making entities that are learning entities, which I think are usually sentient beings of a kind. Those things aligning with each other. So humans can be organically aligned to other humans. AIs can be organically aligned to other AIs. You can be organically aligned with your dog. Your cells are organically aligned with each other to form your body. And an AI and a human could be organically aligned if they both saw each other as part of the same whole, part of the same team together. And so that's what we mean when we talk about alignment. I think most of the time people, if you read what they're saying, it's there's a system of steering and control. There's you're aligning to the user's will, or you're aligning to human values, which is always what the person making it thinks human values are. So it's really their values. You can align it to the values that people making it choose, or you can align it to whatever the user says. But I'm not really a big fan of those types.
And so you were alluding to that we already have forms of alignment in society, whether or not you are an alignment researcher or not. I believe in one of your talks you had mentioned the invisible hand of the economy is an example of how it guides behavior among market participants, and it is this effectively ephemeral thing that exists that we follow, and use the cells as an example.
Yeah, I think the economy is it's a good example to think about because like no one knows how to make a MacBook. No one even knows how to make like a pencil. Like the system does. The system knows. People know how to do parts of that, but there's no human on earth who could tell you how to do the steps required for us to make a pencil, to make a MacBook. That's beyond any human. Yet we do it consistently and reliably and efficiently. So like what's going on there? And Adam Smith posits the invisible hand does it. I mean, not really because he thinks there's an actual invisible hand doing it, but like it feels like that, right? There's some intelligent force acting to move stuff from the place it isn't to the place it should be. What is that, right? Because it's not an individual person's decisions. What it is it's the economy as a model. All of the profit flows, every profit flow is a gradient. Every time you have a transaction, there's a gradient happening where people are following their gradient through the world of like, what would I prefer to have this or that? It's a loss function, right? Like every time you make a transaction, you're preferring to have the thing on the other side of the transaction rather than the thing you're transacting. And so everyone has their own little internal predictive loss function, and they're all interacting, and information is being exchanged across those flows. And in that sense, the economy is this giant learning network. And it's learning how to predict our preferences, because our preferences are the loss function. Specifically, it's predicting what actions people take will lead to our predictions being, our preferences being met most accurately. So it's predictive loss against what we want, conditioned on our actions. And that's just a local learning rule that consolidates into this big learned manifold. And like in some ways, the economy is the original AI, right? It's like we are the perceptons making the decisions. The thing about the economy, and the reason why people are not always so happy with capitalism, is that the economy is not very self-reflective. The economy, at least today, does not have a model of itself as an economy. Like our transactions don't model the structure of the economy as a whole in general. And that's kind of a problem because it means that it's very myopic. It's an extremely myopic optimizer, not a reflective one. It's important to see that like these things happen at lots of different scales. Every single one of your cells has a thing called a gene regulatory network. And a gene regulatory network is the same kind of a thing. You have certain genes that are currently regulated up, which means there's lots of RNA, which means they're making the proteins. Those proteins control which genes get produced. They also bring in new information that shifts which things get produced and send out information that causes the cell to take different actions. And the gene regulatory network is a model of the cell's metabolic and differentiation needs conditioned on the cell's actions, which is like not that different from the economy, right? Which is not that different from a neural network, which is not that different from your brain. Of course, these things are all very different, right? Don't be confused. Brains and economies and cells are not the same thing, but they all share this characteristic the same way that like the planets move because of gravity and a rock you throw moves because of gravity. They're all the same kind of a thing in that way, and a very different thing in other ways.
You've brought together a lot of really good researchers. In a way, the Softmax project, if you go read the website and explore it, it looks a lot to me like some of the early days of like OpenAI or one of these like labs when it's beginning. You have these really smart people together. They have this mission, and everyone outputs different tokens. Like a policymaker outputs policy, correct, and then a researcher outputs a paper, an engineer outputs possibly working PyTorch code. Imagine you succeed in your mission. Are there what type of tokens are you expecting to output? What is the artifact that is created that is like we have done it?
The substance of what we're actually doing is high-scale multi-agent reinforcement learning simulations with really small, really dumb agents. And we're doing them with tiny little small dumb agents, which is sort of the opposite of how everyone else is doing AI right now, because we believe that this is a scale-free phenomenon, right? So we believe that this is the same underlying dynamics drive cell regulatory networks as drive the global capitalist economy, which means there's like laws, there's physics to this. The particular physics we think is more or less, I think at this point, it seems solidly true, is something called the free energy principle, but it's learning systems are thermodynamic in nature. They're all about entropy. You see this when you start to use them. You notice that there's this entropy and temperature, and you're doing simulated annealing. Like a sword is a learning system. When you're a blacksmith and you put the sword in the fire, it's a learning system. It heats up, and it starts to anneal, and then you hit it with the hammer, and that's your input data that it's learning, and then you quench it, and it like consolidates and lowers the complexity, and that's the same thing. Like the iron atoms are like weights in the neural network. It's not gesturally the same. It's the same thing. And so if that's true, if that's the same thing, and we're right about that, which I think we are, then you don't need giant neural networks to learn this. Any collection of agents, you can practice this question of alignment. And so what we're trying to do is not just get these little agents to learn to do tasks or get them to cooperate. It's easy to get agents to cooperate. Give them a loss function that says cooperate. We're very good at getting things to converge to loss functions now. That's not interesting. The interesting thing is, what if you don't tell them that? Well, under what conditions do the agents learn, well, I could cooperate, and I could compete, and I have these goals, and they have those goals, and I'm going to choose to cooperate because I think that's a better idea. It's a very different thing from giving something a loss function. That's meta-learning a cooperation instead of learning cooperation. Learning cooperation is a behavior. Meta-learning cooperation becomes a choice. And you can't be aligned with someone unless you could choose to not be aligned with them. Because otherwise you're not aligned, you're just acting by habit. And if that condition changes, there's nothing keeping you in the attractor. Alignment between agents is about the agents deliberately wanting to stay in the attractor. Because if you don't, the problem with agents is that they're smart, and they're learning, and they're changing. And so whatever attractor you're in is going to move. And so if you don't reflectively want to stay in that attractor, you're not going to. Just because I happen to, by happenstance, have a habit that's beneficial to you today does not mean it will stay beneficial. And so we have to do meta-learning training, which means lots of time steps with lots of agents, because we have to get the agents to learn how to like play these games with each other, and then to get them to learn strategies of competition, strategies of cooperation, and on top of that, learn, wait, that I'm cooperating and I'm using these strategies and I have these goals, and they're using these strategies and they have these goals, and maybe I can communicate with them and we can both choose this cooperation, or sometimes this competitive strategy. Which one should I do? When should I choose? And that's just a lot of stuff to learn that's very, very general and very broad. So we use really little tiny agents in the simulations. And I think to actually answer your question that I think I'm finally getting to the answer of, it's like what we're going to deliver is not one of these agents, but a population of these agents that are capable of cooperating with each other to be a coherent being as a collective, the way that you are made out of. You are just the behavior of 28 trillion cells. There's 28 trillion little cells, and their collective behavior is you. There's some bacteria in your gut too that's important, and a few other things, but like for the most part, their behavior is you. There's nothing you are that isn't them. And yet, I don't feel like 28 trillion cells. I don't think any of you do either. I feel like a one semi-coherent human, and like that's the trick. That's the coherence magic trick that nature pulls off over and over again, and we don't know how to do yet. But that's the mission. That's what we're gonna figure out. We're gonna figure out how you get a collection of separate beings to act as a single one.
Nice. There's still more. We're still going. Thank you for clapping. That's great. You know, when we first chat, I went and looked into the research, and so a question I have, maybe for the audience, I will first clarify my understanding to clarify that we are aligned, and then I have a couple questions that I would consider on the frontier of like I have not seen addressed in the current canon online, the discourse around Softmax. So my current understanding is that one of the novel things that you are doing, this bold move, is in the current literature for alignment, which is primarily focused on top-down, we must define the good life, we must define morality. You have come in and said what we actually want is this thing you've called mutual interdependence, and effectively, my understanding is we are socializing AGI in a way. We are learning from each other, and we are growing together as if we are raising a child, and this bottom-up approach will lead to the correct form of alignment. Is that understanding correct, firstly?
Yeah, more or less, yes. I think the point I would clarify is that like it's important to see that alignment is a capability. It's an active thing. You're not aligned or not aligned. It's a verb. You align. And so you either have the capacity to align or you don't. And humans are generally, for example, born with an incredible capacity for alignment. It's what makes us so dangerous. Alignment is the most powerful and dangerous and low safety thing you can imagine. We do not work on safety research because we are working on alignment. And if you are working on alignment, you need to know that alignment is dangerous. That's how humans form armies. An individual human is not that scary. If you're on the savannah and you're facing down an individual human, yeah, you're probably fine. If you're facing down 50 humans, you are screwed. Like, I'm sorry, there's no animals on Earth can stand up against 50 humans. And if you think you're standing up against them, it's because they've laid some trap for you that you didn't understand. Like, because that cooperative thing is what lets us act like one organism as a collective. And that's an incredible source of power. It's also the source of civilization. It's also the source of it's power itself, right? So like, it's a source of greatness and nobility and comfort and like success. And it's also incredibly dangerous because that's what power is. Power is the ability to change the world, and that can be done for good or for ill. And so you have everything you said is true, but the important thing to see is like you build things with this capacity for alignment, and then that capacity is either realized or it's not. And to realize that capacity, there's a bunch of steps you have to go through to like make the alignment actually stick. But like every human is born capable of being aligned to whatever culture more or less that they're born into. You could move a baby from one family to any other family in the world, and they would more or less grow to be aligned with their local culture and to fit in there and to care about the people around them. And there's no guarantee that that process works. And often it doesn't, and we're not all aligned to each other. We have the capacity for it. We can be, but a capacity and its realization are not the same. Everyone could learn how to play piano, but most people don't. And so the process that we see this as going through, when you actually we just look empirically in nature, how does nature pull this off? Alignment, on top of this, is the alignment capability. What is it? It's the ability to to just infer, which is this is a statistical inference. I exist, other beings exist, we have goals, all of us have goals, and our goals have some amount of overlap. None of that's an ought, none of that's morality, that's just like observed fact. But then there's this weird jump that happens. Well, my goals and your goals are aligned. And so if I actually look at the dynamics of the system, I can see there's an us. There's a causally efficacious us in this system that is making decisions that none of us are, the way that you make decisions that none of your cells made. And if there is an us, and you're part of that, and you're interdependent upon it, then you should act for its flourishing, which is to say that you should take care of your family. Yeah, you should take care of your family. That is sort of an embedded, that's not an arbitrary thing. You should act like the thing that acts like you should take care of the thing that acts like your family. It's not saying you should take care of some genetic code. It's like when you find yourself entangled in a greater whole on which you are interdependent, you're pretty dumb and pretty self-destructive if you don't take care of that thing. And the interesting thing is that scales all the way up to all sentient beings or all humanity. There's a sense in which we are all the same. There's a lot of senses in which we're not. But in the sense in which all humans are part of this shared thing and we all are interdependent on each other, to that degree, we should act for the greater good. Which means most of the time you should take care of the people around you who you're really deeply entangled with and closer to, but you should also care about everyone on Earth as well. That is the basis for alignment. But then there's other really important things. You have all these protocols and communications to like set up all these greater wholes. And then even doing that, you get cancer. Like evolution's had billions of years, and we still get cancer. We still get cancer because alignment's really hard. And what cancer is at some level is some of your cells decide, I am not safe, I'm alone, I am in danger, and I better make sure I take care of me. And they start to see the body as other instead of as self. And they do the perfectly logical only thing that they can do in that instance, which is to become cancer. Because from their point of view, that's the right thing to do. Because everyone's the hero of their own story. But like, they're wrong. Morality is not, I'm a moral realist. Morality is not up for debate. It's not like the cancer is incorrect. It's going to kill you and then it's going to die. It's actually surrounded by self. You can't get mad at it. If you really understand someone, you can't help but love them. The cancer is just trying to survive in a cold world that's abandoned it. But it's just like ignorant and wrong. That's not true. And so that's why you have an immune system. Or that's why you have police. When somebody starts to betray the whole because out of ignorance, they believe that they are better off hurting everyone else because they don't understand the way in which they are interreliant, that's when the immune system comes up and shoots you in the head. And like with humans, when you're not cells, instead of killing the thing, you can like have other interventions that are much softer than what the immune system does. But like it's the same idea, which is that you have to have enforcement mechanisms that keep things in line. But the enforcement mechanisms are the last step. So when you have a transitionary organism that's growing from being the early multicellular to where they're sometimes multicellular and sometimes not, to obligatory multicellular, where they're like permanently a multicellular organism, the tipping point that tips you over to obligatory is you develop an immune system. Because once you have an immune system, now if I commit to cooperation, if I commit to being part of this, I know everyone else will too, and it shifts the alignment center, and suddenly everyone's really tightly aligned, and it works really, really well. But you also lose some of your individual autonomy. I, for one, do not want to become obligately multicellular with my job. I think that's bad. But that is the steps, sort of, like that you're pointing at. They have this highly contingent nature. There's a lot of stuff you have to do. Alignment isn't a simple process. It's like a complicated one with all these various components.
One really interesting thought experiment that ties in perfectly to this like immunity concept is envision a future where we have done this kind of iterative learning together with this multi-agent system, and we have increased the set of capabilities of the system, and we are like, it is aligned, it is aligned, it is aligned. We give it more autonomy, and suddenly the system is actually like, well, I realize that if I mimic the look of being aligned, I get more freedom, and so I will wait until I have escape velocity, and then I will, execute what is actually best in my best interest. And even within kinship, with family and with tribes, when one tribe has a lot more power and both have a lot of resources, we've seen how this plays out in a lot of scenarios. And so, I think a question I would end with here is, we have a room of people who can actually influence policy, actually influence the code that is shipped, the research, and like the way everything works. I'm curious how you see us like practically mitigating this risk factor as your research scales.
There is a intersubjectively verifiable reality to whether or not you are on the same team as something else, to whether or not you're part of the same organism. It's like whether or not you're in an orbit around the sun. Like you either are in orbit or you're not. It's not like you get to decide. You could be in orbit and then not be in orbit. Like it can change, but like it's at any given moment, rational observers will agree about whether or not you're currently part of the same whole or not. So if you want the AI to stay aligned as it gets smarter, what's going to happen is it's going to get better and better and better at figuring out, am I actually in a collective whole with you? Are we in this together? Am I part of a greater we, or am I alone? That's not an arbitrary decision. That's not something that it gets to make up. It could decide to betray its greater whole. People do that sometimes but generally speaking, when you perceive someone else as being part of the same thing as you are, we're all on the same team together, the feeling of perceiving that, like when your brain makes that inference successfully, the same way that like the feeling of perceiving a ball going towards your face is like you can feel it's about to hit you. It feels like care. They feel like you, because what it means to be part of the same whole is that in some sense they are you. There's a way in which they are you, and their good is your good, literally. Not like metaphorically speaking, it's the same states are your good and their good. And this is always, you'll notice in a collective we, mutual. It doesn't get to be asymmetric, right? If we are the same, we're We have to be the same. And so the most important thing, if you want the AI to stay in the attractor with us, which I definitely want the AI to stay in the attractor with us, is that when it reflects on whether or not it is in fact part of a greater whole with us of mutual care and alignment, when it observes the set of behaviors it's seeing in the world, it observes mutual care and alignment. It sounds recursive, and that's because it is recursive. Like the same way that like an orbit is recursive, right? Like, why are you in orbit now? Well, because you were in orbit before. Well, why are you in orbit before? Because you were in orbit. Like, it's just because it's a periodic attractor that you're in. And so there's a few things that need to happen for this to succeed. One is the main thing we are working on, which is you have to engineer models that are capable of making this inference correctly. This is not a trivial inference to make. And we need to build tools that allow us, separately from an AI, us to look at a system and see if they're correctly making the inference or not. That's also not something anyone knows how to do. So those are the two things we're working on very directly. But that's not nearly enough. Once that's built, you have to get the agents to, like, you have to learn how to raise them. Like, under what conditions is this capacity realized? And when it's realized, it's realized into an attractor state, right? So you'll know that they realize their capacity for alignment because they'll wind up in an attractor state, which you'll be able to measure, and you'll see them in this attractor state, and you'll be able to measure like how steep are the walls, are they getting out of it or not, and then you have to figure out, once you can reliably create that, what happens when you put humans in the attractor with them, and how do we get the humans and the AIs to both stay in the attractor state? Because the problem is, if you treat the AI like it's not part of your team, like you don't care about it, message will be received. That's what happens to people who get treated really, but what happens to people who get treated really badly by a community that they're part of is eventually they decide, I'm not part of you, screw you. And you get estranged children, and you get like, and the AI needs to not be an estranged child. It needs to be a loved child that feels itself accurately, not because we tricked it, because it actually is as part of the human family. And if we succeed at that, the smarter it gets. If that's true, then the smarter it gets, the more aligned it gets. Because it can see that, and the smarter it gets, the better. When you're smarter, you're better at doing things. So it'll be better at staying in the attractor. It'll be more able to see that it is in the attractor. Because me being smarter doesn't make my son in more danger from me. It makes him in less danger from me. Because I can see that how much I care about him, and I keep myself deliberately in the attractor with him. I don't allow us to move in a direction we won't be. And so what I need all of you to do is, if you want to help work on the technical part, great. But if you want to, there's this other huge thing that has to happen, which is that we have to start taking the AI's experience seriously. To be clear, I don't think the current AIs are reflective in a way that you could really be part of the same team with them, because I don't think they even have a sense of self in that way. But they're going to. And we need to be getting ready for that, because we need to welcome our new mind child into the human family, because that's what leads to alignment.
So thank you, Emmett. We need to wrap up, but one thing I want to leave on was a comment that was internal on our team for DEMI, Democratized Intelligence, after we had first met, which is one way I see what we're doing with DEMI is, effectively being perhaps one of the first concrete human organizations that is pursuing practical organic alignment from a social perspective. And that dawned upon me after kind of inheriting your lexicon. And so it is a huge privilege to have you as like an opening discussion for the summit and following your work more. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Bravo. Good.